Mm-hmm. Gotcha. All right. All right. I have the time at 11:03. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This time I'd like to do a roll call, please, Beverly.
Thank you, Chairman Cody. Director Emerson, not present for the vote. Director Odell, not present for roll call, I'm sorry. Director, Vice Chair Stone? Thank you. Director Lockett?
Here.
Thank you. Director Adams?
Here.
Thank you. Director Robinson?
Present.
Thank you. Director Leggett? Not present for roll call. Director Taylor? Thank you. And Chairman Cody?
Yes, President.
Chairman, you have a quorum for today's meeting, April the 25th. Thank you.
All right. This time I'd like to get a first and a second on approval for today's agenda.
So moved.
Beverly, can I get the roll call, please?
Thank you, Chairman Cody. I'll do a roll call vote for the approval of today's agenda for April the 25th. Director Emerson, not present for the vote. Director Odell?
Yes.
Thank you. Director Stone?
Yes.
Thank you. Director Lockett?
Yes.
Thank you. Director Adams? Director Robinson?
Yes.
Thank you. Director Leggett? Not present for the vote. Director Taylor?
Yes.
Thank you. And Chairman Cody?
Yes.
Chairman, motion passed.
Thank you, Beverly. I'd like to thank our stakeholders, our community involvement, and staff, and our board, and our CEO, Ms. Faye DeMassimo. First, before we get into today's agenda, I would like to concur with Dr. Robinson when she made the statement about when she sent the email in about our staff being led by Dr. Manning. He brings us a class of 11 new operators, potential operators. This brings the opportunity of offering quality service to our customers. I'd like to give them a small hand. Thank you for your hard work. Next, we have the Garden City ribbon expansion. We're going to be having a cutting ceremony Friday, June the 2nd. We have more information coming a little later from staff. We would like to acknowledge the work and partnership that Garden City and their staff and their council with their mayor, Bruce Campbell, had involved with our staff. Our CEO, Mr. Vaca, also was involved in this process, along with our very own Mr. Kenneth Adams, that's over the 8th District. We thank him for all their dedicated service. And we have 6 new stops, and we'd like to give ourselves a hand of applause on that. Next, it gives me great pleasure to congratulate our very own CEO, Ms. Faye DeMassimo. She's the 100th most influential woman in Georgia, and her engineering. Give her a hand of applause. Shows dedication to her hard work, as we found out within this last year. And we thank her for everything she does for this organization. Next, we have a presentation on our master transit plan to Howell, Nelson, Nygard, and Infra Strategies. Thank you.
While we're bringing up the presentation, Chairman, thank you all. Thank you so much for all those opening comments this morning. Lot of movement at CAT, where there's a lot of good things happening. And you're about to hear the, remember at our last month's meeting, we talked about the what we're trying to consider as a part of our master transit plan. What are some of the things that we're looking at? And this month, we had said we're going to talk about the how, and particularly those very important financial and implementation strategies that are critical to how we make the what a reality in serving those in our community that need and want our services. So with that, I'd like to introduce Denise Grabowski. Denise is on the Nelson Nygaard team, but local with Symbiosity, and she's going to be talking through some of the initial slides, and then the InfoStrategies team will be digging into the financial and implementation strategies detail. Denise?
Good morning. Thank you so much. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for this opportunity. I'm going to start briefly and then really turn it over to InfoStrategies to get into to the heart of our conversation this morning. So here's a brief agenda. Touch briefly on the Transit Master Plan just to frame the conversation, particularly if we have those viewing online who are not as familiar. And then really spend the majority of the time talking about the financial strategies and the implementation, and then how we move on to our next steps. So the Master Transit, actually, I'm going to go back for just a second. You probably have seen this image before, but I just have to highlight, throughout the development of the Master Transit Plan, we've been working very hard to work with a wide range of stakeholders, and this is an image of students from Johnson High School that we worked with. We met with them in person, had a focus group session with them, and they also did some mapping strategies afterwards. And so it's really great to have our young people that are involved, because obviously they are our leaders of tomorrow. So just wanted to highlight that neat opportunity we had. The Master Transit Plan, as you have heard before, is really branded together as Chatham Connects. It's bringing together three very important transit studies. First, the Transit Service Plan, your COA and TDP, which is really looking more at your shorter term recommendations and strategies. The Master Transit Plan, which is going to start to look at that mid to longer range, and really how do we think about transit in Chatham County and really our region moving forward, particularly in the face of extreme growth and development that we are experiencing already and we know will continue. And then finally, the electrification study. So the master plan investment priorities, you heard about this at your last month's board meeting. And so we're really going to focus on the ones that you see bolded in front of you today. Under transit services, increasing service levels, getting back to that service that CAT has experienced historically. Introducing microtransit. This is the opportunity to provide transit service in a new model for Chatham Area Transit, where we are looking at servicing zones in addition to our fixed route customers. Capital investments, bus stop improvements. How can we make that first impression of CAT the best possible impression, and also make sure that we are providing the utmost comfort that we can for our users from the very first moment that they are waiting on a facility or a bus, as well as their experience moving forward. And then finally, policies and programs. How can we move some of these strategies forward in that way, in particular looking at zero fares and potential expansion of zero fare opportunities, job access vouchers, and the van pool program. These investment priorities really are looking to how can we move forward in a way that will make sure that the financial solvency of CAT is protected and managed. And really Amanda and her partner Joshua are the experts at that. And so I'm going to turn it over to her to really walk us through the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. So let's talk about the how. And before we talk about the how and where CAT wants to be in the future, we need to talk about where CAT is today in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic and how you've come out of that and where you are as of your last budget in fiscal year 2023. So as you know, and I think you've heard this body has heard this, your operating costs are outpacing your operating revenue. A lot of that has to do with the COVID-19 pandemic, global inflation, and your costs are just higher than they used to be. At the same time, your operating revenue, which is primarily from your special district transit tax, has been generally stagnant. And in fact, it was rolled back the last budget, and it hasn't been increased since 2017. So while all of that has remained relatively flat, your costs are going up, and we're at a point right now, a transitional point in your financial strategies as we're developing this master transit plan. We want to really think about where you are today and where we want you to be tomorrow, the next year, 10 years, and 30 years out. One of the big pieces that's helped you currently, even with these costs going up and your revenue being flat, is your COVID-19 relief fund. So like the rest of the agencies across the country, you have COVID-19 relief funds, which are a one-time source that is supporting your operations until 2026. After 2026, like the rest of your peers, that source is going to go away, and you really need to start thinking about what your operating budget looks like without the COVID-19 relief funds. Your passenger fare revenue went from what was previously about 13% pre-COVID, and now it's about 4%. All of those items that I mentioned, the costs going up, and driver shortages and COVID-19 impacts has resulted in that decrease in fare revenue. And we have seen some service reductions. I think everyone here is familiar with that. And that has actually, Ms. Cutter has mentioned in other committee meetings over the past couple weeks that will have some savings this budget cycle. And we'll talk a little more about what that savings might be and how those could be used more strategically. So on the capital side, like your peers across the country, there has been a historic underinvestment in capital funding and capital priorities. Several of your assets are in significant need of an increased investment to get you to maintain your state of good repair. A lot of that has to do with the fact that you haven't had a robust pool of matching funds to match federal dollars and federal support over that time period. So that's something we're looking to address in the financial strategies in the master transit plan. I mentioned cost increases. They're not just impacting the operating side, they're impacting your capital budgets as well. A lot of the estimates that you had just recently had done last year, 2 years ago, they're already much lower than they would cost to date to deliver. So that has impacted some of your project financial plans and required CAT to put more local match down than previously anticipated to meet your delivery schedules. Now, there's some good news on the capital side, and I know you guys have been hearing this and have seen all of the great press nationally that we're seeing from your SMART Grant Award, which was a very unique award, having 100% federal match. Very great for CAT, given your current financial picture. And you also have the Georgia Transit Trust Funds, which you have a line item request and an application in for formula funding right now for that brand new funding source for transit in the state of Georgia. So those are great items that are advancing for CAT. But it's very important to mention, and I'll probably say this a few times, that SMART grant's very unique. Pretty much every other grant program requires at least a 20% match of local funds. A lot of the more highly subscribed programs, like the RAISE grant program, require over 50% match. So to be able to compete for the bigger ticket programs, like a $25 million award from the RAISE grant program, you really need to come in with a much bigger match to be able to compete. So that's where CAT is. And in reality, CAT is not lonely. You have a lot of national peers who are experiencing the same issues that I just talked through. But I will say, and this is all being driven by the COVID-19 the pandemic and all of the cost increases and the ridership decreases, and the fact that one-time COVID relief funding is about to go away. So a lot of your peers are actually in a much more dire situation where they have a fiscal cliff coming up next year or the year after. CAT is in a unique position today because you are doing this planning exercise, this master transit plan. You have, because of staffing shortages, cut your service down a bit, and you can start really thinking strategically about where do we want to be in the future when these COVID relief funds go away? You know, what is CAT when the COVID relief funds go away? And now that we have new service models like microtransit, which Denise mentioned, are those better, more cost-effective ways to provide better service? So we can really start thinking through, because of where CAT is today, how to get to your new normal without hitting a fiscal cliff at all. So I'll go through 6 different recommendations that we're putting forward in the master transit plan. The first is something you've already done, essentially, is you've because of the staffing shortages, you've had to reduce service, and your operating budget that you approved in fiscal year 23 actually has some savings. I'm not sure the amount as of today, but there's going to be a certain amount of savings by the end of this fiscal year that's going to be under what you approved in your budget. And the idea is that we would continue that. We'd build it back with some new service models like microtransit. We'd really strategically think about our operating budget and what we want it to be in the future and build back to a lower operating budget target starting next year. So you're already working on your fiscal year 24 budget. So that's, I think, in the works right now. You would then build that forward into the future with what is a set-aside funding that you would use strategically rather than as annual funding that will ultimately go away. So that set-aside funding target that we're looking for is about $5 million a year over the next few fiscal years. So I mentioned there's some savings from this last fiscal year. Let's say that's $5 million. And the next few fiscal years, we'll target about $5 million in savings. That would total about $25 million in funding that you could use strategically. You could use it for capital investments like state of good repair needs, which I know are very critical for CAT to do soon. You could use it for bus stop improvements. You could use it for the CDL training program and other improvements that we're going to be recommending as part of the master transit plan. It could be thought of as a more strategic one-time investment in getting CAT from today to where we want CAT to be in the future. Because ultimately, it will be going away. So in 2027, the COVID relief funds that we're relying upon, just like the rest of your peers nationally, will be dropping down and going away. Those are one-time funds. So your new normal in 2027 is significantly lower than where you are today, if we were to project it forward. So the idea is to, instead of waiting, to strategically and proactively use those funds to make investments in CAT today. Because if you wait on state of good repair investments, each year it adds costs, and it's still a need that you need to do today. So instead of using it as an annual operating support, you would use it as a strategic investment in CAT's future. That also lines up with this thing called the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, which passed in November of 2021, which is really an unprecedented time of federal funding. That's what funded the SMART grant. So currently we are in a time where CAT could, if you have local matching dollars, compete for millions of dollars to bring into Savannah Chatham. So for example, if you were to have $5 million a year, about $25 million, and you were to assume a 20/80 match, that's $100 million and a total of $125 million in investments that could be made and leveraging of about $100 million of federal grants that could be made over the next few fiscal years. So just the point that, again, federal funding requires local match. If you don't have a local match, you can't compete. And again, the time is now because the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law ends in 26 as well. So your COVID relief funds and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law all are set to end in 2026. So in addition to all the federal support, we'd look at targeting other partnerships on the state, local, and the project-specific side. So these are some of the items that have risen to the top. For example, the Georgia Transit Trust Fund is a big item, which you have been pursuing, a brand new source. There are some other bond proceeds and GTIB loans and grants that we could look at for specific projects that might be eligible. And on the local side, of course, you've seen some of these before. These are the typical mechanisms we'd be looking at for both short-term support and then eventually for long-term support. But a SPLOST or a single county T-SPLOST, that's really more of a short-term, 5-year at a time, 6-year at a time funding stream. So we're putting that in the short-term category as a potential local funding source to pursue. On the project-specific side, we're really looking at, for this specific project, is there a potential for sponsorships? Is there a potential for a partner to come in and help us pay for operations? So we'll really be digging into the recommendations of the Master Transit Plan and trying to align different, more unique funding streams that are more in line with partnerships.
When I see up there local hotel motel fee, are you talking about just for Chatham Area Transit, or are you talking about, because they just did an increase?
Yes,
So tell me what your thought process on that is.
it would have been like that increase, but with transit funding as part of that package, which was not the case. So it would be
Okay,
more.
so that's off.
It could be that, or you could potentially this is a bigger barrier to implementation, but you could have state approval for a new mechanism that was for transit.
I don't think that's gonna fly.
Right.
But I
Bigger
was just
barrier.
curious to whether you thought that might have been included. In the, what was it, a 2% increase? Yeah, okay, so, yeah, I don't see another increase just for
Yeah.
transit, but I don't see why that, and I guess the cities and the counties aren't gonna wanna give up a percentage, but they should.
Is the hotel motel tax increase, and maybe this is bad, is it like SPLOST where it had to be expressly dictated and then voted on, or is it just sort of a slush fund of money
It's a
that?
tax on everybody that comes and stays in hotels and motels.
Yes, but is
And it goes
it-
to the city and the county.
Ms. Cutter, do you want to comment on that? I know that this
Well,
is,
basically, it's an agreement between the city, county, chamber, and other community partners as to how that money is going to be dispersed. And typically, there is an agreement that arises out of that, and that's how the pot of money is distributed. Now, originally, there was conversation regarding some of that money being shared with Chatham Area Transit, but as it passed, transit dollars were not a part of that. Not to say that in the future it cannot be, just didn't happen this time.
and I think the point of having it on the list up here is just of identifying it as a potential. It's not that there's anything specific right now, but it is a potential. And in fact, we did extensive coordination with the local proponents of what was passed this last session, because we had such new opportunity in the Georgia Transit Trust Fund, particularly on the line item allocation side. We chose not to, quote, compete for the dollars that were being considered in that source, because we had a different source. But I think the collaboration and spirit of partnership that exists between those that are proponents locally and sponsors of the local hotel motel fee and the future of CAT, there's still great opportunity there. I just think it's not a, immediate one.
We ought to start that dialogue now.
Completely
While we're
agree.
not in session and meetings now, because don't wait until January.
Well, I think, Director Stone, you brought up an important thing, and it's something I'll mention here, is we've already started working on our legislative agenda for next year.
Okay.
We've got it well under development already, so
I mean, I don't
appreciate
know
that
what-
comment.
It's kind of like taking candy from babies, but, I don't know if we have a chance, but now is the time to start, for sure.
And I should mention that each of these sources, you could go through and make those same comments. They all have barriers to implementation and trade-offs, and we will be documenting that as part of the master transit plan. But yeah, and the other piece that Faye just mentioned, that it may not be immediate this year, but when we say short-term, we mean longer than 1, 2, 3 years. We're thinking more the next 5 or 6 years.
One other thing I'd want to mention, just because I know it's not one of the highlighted ones up there yet, but curb monetization, I at least want to get that out there to socialize the idea. And we have had some preliminary conversations with the city of Savannah about that notion. Is there are communities that are looking at, curb is now your most valuable piece of real estate in a community. It's not what it used to be. You've got all kinds of ride-hail services that are using your curb pretty much free of charge. You've got other kinds of services that are there. It's not just about parking or sidewalks. You've got technology infrastructure, could be fiber, whatever, that's now residing, getting to, have a home in your curbside infrastructure and maybe being there without charge. So the notion of how we begin to manage the value of curbside infrastructure, and that becomes really important to transit, because what does transit need to be able to succeed? We need curbs where our stops and shelters are, and we need sidewalks that get people safely to and from the places where they start their trip with us. So I think I want to be sure to just throw that notion out there, that how we collaborate with the local owners of curbs, whether that's the city, the county, or others, to think about, is there a value in that curb that we all need to be recovering, and then taking that value and plowing it back into the things that are important public services and public utilities, whether that is, the curb itself or transit or any of a number of other local government services that exist there.
Any other questions or comments on the short-term strategies, or we'll move on to the longer-term picture? Anything else? Okay. So all of that I just talked about, 1 through 6, is getting to a point where you can build the case for longer-term investment. You're, transitioning to this new normal, this financially sustainable future where COVID relief funds are gone, and you have invested in your system, you have a good state of good repair, you have a good customer experience at your bus stops, and you're showing your partners that you're doing the most with the money that you have today, so you can make the case for bigger investments down the road. Some of those are mentioned on the state side. Really, it's going to be annual pursuit of those 2 new sources, unless something new comes down the line in terms of state funding in the long term, which could happen. Faye, you have something. Ms.
I was just going
DeMassimo.
to mention, and I had not thought about it before now, but Ms. Cutter and I also need to get you the details under the state. In addition to the Georgia Transit Trust Fund, we have an annual allocation of funds that comes specifically for the ferry boat program. Comes, interestingly enough, through the Federal Highway Administration to GDOT, and we should include that there as well, because it's an annual allocation that for a number of years we didn't access, and we actually lost 1 year of funding. And Ms. Cutter and I have now, there's 3 years that we've just recovered, plus the new 4th year that we're in progress on now. So I just wanted to mention that. It's right, 80/20, yes.
So we usually have that in the federal pot, but that is we should have it as its own line, because that's very important for CAT. Yes. So that's a big, and that also received major increases through the bipartisan infrastructure law as well, about 30% increase. So on the state side, we'll be continuing to pursue in the long term annual commitments. Right now, we're talking, $260,000, I believe, in annual formula funds that are brand new funding for CAT, and then these line item pursuits, which could be somewhere in the $1 million to $6 million range from our initial understanding of the new programs. On the local side, though, that's when we're really talking about that local match that's needed to advance your programs, to advance bigger ticket items like bus rapid transit, like expansion of microtransit, all of the items that we'll be putting in the longer term strategies of the master transit plan. That requires a dedicated funding stream in the long term beyond what you currently have today. So I have 4 different options shown on the screen. Denise and I were talking offline about the local hotel motel fee, which you brought up as well, Director, that maybe not a short-term option, but could be a longer-term option, especially 5 to 10 years from now, as a potential long-term annual revenue stream to advance transit. But there's also, of course, your current funding stream. And is there a way to expand that district, or is there a way to increase the millage that's currently levied? Those are 2 different options, both of which would require some partnerships. Probably a little more short to medium term, rather than something like a single county transit SPLOST or a regional transit sales tax increase, would be more of a longer term strategy for expansion. Each of those have trade-offs. Each of those have varying levels of revenue potential, legal. Maybe you need to go to the state and get legal changes. You need maybe council approval. There's all types of barriers for each of these, and we'll be documenting those in the master transit plan. Any questions on this before I hand it off to our microtransit expert? No? Okay. Joshua.
I'm just thinking we already do have tax, and it does seem that we have a lot of. Thanks, Beverly. As I was saying, we already do have a tax, the special service district tax. And it does seem to me that I didn't get any thank you letters from people who had a decrease in their taxes. And so I just feel like maybe there is a little bit of a capacity to not let that, as we all know, if we don't increase it and property values goes up, then we have to advertise it as a what? Like as a rollback? We said like if we don't change the millage rate, then it goes up. You have to, if you don't change it. Yeah. What do you call that package of formulas?
They advertise it, it is very difficult to understand,
Mm-hmm.
but it has to do with the digest growth.
Yes.
If you don't recognize the digest growth, then in essence, you are doing a millage increase, even though you don't see it on your bill.
I've always thought that was a weird way to do it.
And, it's too early to tell what the digest is going to come in. But I can tell you from the county's perspective, what I'm learning bit by bit, especially like at the sheriff's department, we're going to see major increases. So I'm just praying that we can keep our budget somewhat the same, but I have no idea. I mean, his costs for healthcare out there have gone through the roof.
Well, I think in the last year we did. Remind me what we did again. We rolled it. We had a rollback. We did a rollback.
A small rollback, yes.
Yeah, and I think like maybe we don't do that.
Right. We just keep
I'm just
the
saying.
millage the same.
Keep the millage the same. Eat the fact that we might get a couple of comments from people who don't like taxes. I don't like taxes.
Look,
I don't
the
know anybody that
county
does.
did a 1 mil rollback, and just like you said, nobody said a word.
Nobody
Now,
sent me any donuts.
If we did a 1 mil
Yeah.
increase, my emails would have blown up and my phone would have blown up. But we did a rollback, and we've never heard from anybody. And a 1 mil rollback is a significant
That's a
rollback.
significant thing. I mean, that's like our whole. Yeah, we get 1 mil. So I think
Yeah.
just thinking about that, I would rather in the future not give that up so easily.
Yes. And we can look at the impact of what that, I think you might know it off the top of your head of what the impact was.
For this last rollback? Well, we projected that
Here.
it would not. We projected and felt very safe that the rollback would not significantly impact cash grants and
Wait, turn your, I think you turned it off. There you go.
Okay. When we heard of the rollback at the end of June of last year, really weren't that concerned because of the growth in the tax digest. However, as the revenues are coming in, we are seeing a slight decrease. Now, the tax bills just went out in April, and we anticipate a huge check over close to $6 million in May or June. And that's going to really give us the true picture. We originally thought that the revenues would remain as projected, but I think we're going to be a little lower than projected. But we'll see May, June, what the true impact was.
This graph that I've got on here, this is like March of this year, March 2023. That's what I'm looking at. This isn't a projection. This is this one.
Yes.
Cool.
And the reason I thought it would be helpful to the directors, because for the month of March, expenses exceeded revenues by almost $500,000.
Yeah.
And it's really driven by the receipt of this transit tax money. In April, we only received a little over $158,000. But if you look at in December, we received 5.7 million. So it's really driven by when we receive those dollars, how it really impacts us each month. But by year end, it's going to level out. And we project that we're going to have maybe 5.5 mil or more in operating savings for fiscal year '23.
Cool. Thank you.
That's great. So that aligns with our targets. It's awesome. So now I'll hand it off to Joshua unless we have any other questions on the financial strategies. Okay?
All right, good morning. Thanks for having me here. I'm Joshua Shank with InfraStrategies. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the ways that you can potentially do some really innovative and exciting things to improve service. Even if you might have fewer buses on the road, I'll go through some of those strategies, which do include microtransit. So the basic concept here is that you want to use pilot programs to test new ideas. This is something that has been proven effective as a method for figuring out what works. But more importantly, as we were talking about earlier, we're entering a period that is very much a new normal. And one thing we know won't work is doing things the same way we used to do them. So that means you have to try out new stuff and see what among the new stuff actually has potential. And that's what a pilot program does well. Pilot program is also a great way of introducing new ideas to the public without making them feel like, oh my God, it's a permanent change and it's going to be forever. Well, let's try it. See if you like it. And if people like it, then you can keep going. So it's something that creates a culture of innovation, of analysis, really helps to figure out what you want to do next. One of the things that I know you want to experiment with, and you have, thankfully, the funds to experiment with, is this idea of a microtransit pilot. Microtransit is an on-demand transit service that takes you more door-to-door and more based on your schedule. It is something that has become increasingly popular around the country, especially coming out of the pandemic, because travel patterns have changed all around the country, and they have changed to the point where people are not necessarily commuting during typical commuting hours on typical commuting routes, but they are still traveling just as much as they did before. Microtransit is a way of capturing a lot of those trips, capturing the trips that are not necessarily traditional commute trips, that are not necessarily in the traditional commute time. And it can be a more cost-effective way of doing that, as well as a way that is better for the overall customer experience in a number of respects. And that's why it's become increasingly popular. It also, in this case, could be another potential zero fare opportunity, and I'll talk a little bit more about zero fare. I know this is something you're already looking at for paratransit services, which is fantastic. One thing that I've learned, certainly in working in public transit for many years, is that very little gets done without some kind of partnership, right? Partnership is critical to success, especially when you're trying new things. And this can include other public sector partners with whom you can work to develop new ideas, but also private sector innovators who often have good stuff that they're willing to try out, maybe even for low cost or for free, because they want to get that stuff out there. And that's a way to test new things, and it's a way to create the partnerships that will make you stronger together for a long time. This is also a potential way to raise money through SPLOST opportunities, and partnering with other counties is always going to make you stronger when it comes to going after funding. Oh yeah.
Is this where the first mile, last mile would fit in?
Absolutely.
Okay, because I'm really want to see that happen. Because geographically, Chatham County is so large, and a transit system this size cannot afford to run buses all over the entire county.
Absolutely.
And so we've got to figure a way, as the county is sprawling, to get people to the main lines. So in a comfortable, easy fashion, not make it difficult or take 3 hours to get from point A to point B. So if other transit areas are doing this, I really want to see us explore this avenue. And some of our state reps were expressing to me the same thing, that they wanted to see how we can service people in the more remote parts of the county that are choosing not to live within the city limits?
Director, you're actually going to get to see this in 3 different locations over the coming 15 months. The SMART grant is giving us an opportunity to advance this, and so you're going to see a couple of areas that are more West Chatham, and that will particularly be in areas that are not, as you just so well pointed out, are not served and shouldn't be served by big, they're not well suited for big fixed route improvements, but they are still have needs, and there's still connectivity needed there. And especially in that part of Chatham County, the notion of how we're connecting people to jobs as well as to education and services and healthcare and all those kinds of things. So we, as you know, that SMART grant, part of what it was also driven by was making sure that we were addressing historically underserved areas. And so we selected a couple of areas in West Chatham that we proposed in our grant application. In addition to that, we're looking at more of an East Savannah area that also is an area that has historically been underrepresented and includes the unhomed veterans tiny village area. So you're going to get to see in the next 15 months what you've been asking us for, I know at least since I've been here and before, for us to get that first mile, last mile, and now called microtransit as a brand, service out there to do exactly what you're just describing. It's to provide essential service in a cost-effective, efficient way, and in a platform that appeals to the current rider. Current riders are looking for a customization of service. They want to get to the places that they need and want to go when they need and want to go there. So I think this is going to be exciting, and I think you're finally going to get to see the fruition of what you've been asking us for a bit.
You promise?
I promise. You can hold me to it.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the zero fare option. I know this is something you've already got on a couple of routes, but this is another thing that is a trend around the nation, largely because transit agencies are looking at their operating budgets and realizing that fare box revenue accounts for a very small portion of their operating costs, and that the people paying it are some of the people who can least afford to pay to subsidize transit operations. So increasingly looking at zero fare. Now, the thing is that zero fare can target many different potential outcomes. And so you have to tailor your zero fare program to the outcome you want to achieve. It can potentially increase ridership. It can improve equity. It could even get you faster, more reliable service because the boarding process becomes very simple. And in many ways, it can be easier for operators. A lot of conflicts with operators often come from fare disputes, and getting rid of that dispute can reduce the danger that operators sometimes face. On the other hand, zero fare isn't just something you can switch on and say, okay, that's great. There is substantial money coming in from fare box revenue, and fiscal sustainability is pretty critical, as we were talking about earlier. So either you have to find a funding source, or you have to cut something and decide that zero fare is more important than that other thing. And that depends, again, on the goals you're trying to achieve. There is, of course, there's also a perceived security issue that often comes along with zero fare, but I think you haven't had enough data from your services to probably evaluate whether that's true or not. A lot of agencies around the country that have experimented with zero fare have found that the perception might be there, but the actual security issue is not necessarily a problem. And then finally, when thinking about how the fare policy is set, there's lots of different ways you can go, right? There's a whole array of methodologies for setting fares, including but not limited to zero fare. And these depend, again, on the goal you're trying to achieve. And that's why it's so critical to think about what goals are we trying to achieve with fare policy following the Master Transit Plan. Because, for example, if you're really trying to increase revenue, you might focus on things like distance-based fares or a peak off-peak or time-based, because those might increase your revenue stream. However, if you're more interested in issues of equity and increasing ridership, you might think more about zero fare, fare capping, flat fares. So again, thinking about fare policy requires thinking about what goals specifically you care about when it comes to your system. Well, that's it. Any questions?
with zero fare, does that increase ridership? And with that, does that increase cost?
Yeah, so that is a concern. It certainly has the potential to increase ridership, which is a good thing. If ridership increases to the point where you have to add buses, then potentially it could increase costs. However, then it depends on what you're trying to achieve. If, for example, you went with free fare, zero fare in the off-peak time, that's less likely to increase cost because you probably have excess capacity during some of those times, right? So that's a way to get at zero fare without increasing costs. Or if you went with zero fare for specific groups of people that you were concerned about having to pay too much, that might be a way to test out and see how zero fare goes without necessarily increasing costs. So there are different ways of doing it.
Related to microtransit, but I was just thinking, I was looking at places where it's implemented. It's downtown from 5 p.m. till 5 a.m. all day long. Through the downtowner. What I'm imagining is that like a similar service, just not run by us.
The downtowner's a little different, and it is not presently run by us, but one of the things you're going to see in the planning report today is some coordination that we have ongoing with the city of Savannah to potentially become a partner in providing that late evening, downtown workers, getting them home service.
It is. I've always. I like the idea of the downtowner, but I also think it's the most odd place to to try to implement something like first mile, last mile service, because it is the densest, most popular place, perhaps in North America, and you've got some fare-free trans that moves you around, and no further than that. I do understand why they did it, but I've always thought it's very interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because you can put microtransit where it's going to attract a lot of riders and in a very dense area, but then is that as cost effective, for example, as a bus? But if you put microtransit in places where there's less demand and a little more first last mile service, that could be very cost effective. So it's a really important point.
I will say the app for the downtowner is great. It's got a really fantastic user interface, and I think for the microtransit, having such a new idea for a lot of people in town, having an effective user interface that helps explain to our users what they're doing when they're hailing a ride or where they're going or how it works could save us a lot of headache, because the app could be doing a lot of the work for us instead of them calling us up and being very confused.
Director Edminster, I really appreciate you bringing that up, because the truth of the matter is transit, perhaps as much or more than anything else, it's all about the customer experience. From the minute that you're trying to get your ride, and however you're doing that, to the stop or shelter that you're waiting at and what that's like, to the actual service that it has. I mean, it is customer service beginning to end and customer experience beginning to end. And I think that that's something that we've got to think about every step of the way in our Smart Grant microtransit pilot, as well as in how our master transit plan considers our both short-term and longer-term future. Is customer experience has got to be that common thread of how we think about every single piece of the transit system. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Well, and then that reminded me of as well. If we have a separate microtransit app, then we'll have 3 apps that we're maintaining, and that a person would be using. If there's any way to make that all one app, that'd be really cool.
We agree.
Yeah, that'd be. Really
And that's also the direction that people are going. Having too many apps is never good for the customer.
I already have too many apps. I don't even use any of them.
All right, thank you.
I don't even know where they went.
All right, implementation. So a plan is only as great as its implementation, right? So the implementation is a critical step. And as I mentioned earlier, Chatham Connects really brings together several planning initiatives. So we've got the short term, the medium term, and the long term that we are looking at. So in the short term, one of the things we've heard consistently in our stakeholder outreach, both working with our stakeholder committee as well as focus groups and other outreach, is fix it first. So we know we have to address some of that low-hanging fruit. We have to get back to reliable service levels, which can also include microtransit, so that we can start to fix our service issues and also build that trust and reliability for CAT. That also includes pilot programs, certainly with the rapid expansion of growth, the Hyundai plant coming on. What are those opportunities that we have for pilot programs and services, particularly for vouchers? And again, as Ms. DeMassimo said, making sure that we are getting people to jobs. Rebranding in line with investments, as Mr. Edminster was talking about the app. Yeah, I know you've never heard me call you that. One of the things that, again, we heard about in the focus groups was with the app, it is confusing. And as you're rolling out microtransit, it's a great opportunity to rebrand CAT, not in changing the name of CAT, but in helping people to understand the value of the services CAT's providing through microtransit, through the ferries, and through the DOT shuttles. I was just having a conversation with someone the other day, and they said something about the ferries, and I said, yeah, that's part of CAT. And they're like, really? So those opportunities are really robust to be able to really enforce that brand. And then the capital investments, which we heard a good bit about, making sure that we are providing those best services. Medium term, once we see the tremendous success of microtransit, being able to expand it to better serve our users and increase the ridership and reach new users who may not be using transit today. Expanding the pilot programs, the corridor-based investments in capital service. So with our routes, we know we have those 8 routes that really are the strong routes that 80% of our riders are taking. So how can we improve the investments of those 8 routes, increase the frequency so that we can partner those with our other strategies such as microtransit to, again, provide that more robust service. And then in the longer term, expanding the service levels in the service areas. Do we need to rethink about CAT as a regional provider, considering a regional transit authority? I think once people start seeing what CAT is doing, they're going to be like, well, wait a minute, we want that service in our community as well. So how do we move towards that long-term strategy of thinking collectively as a region? We're going that way already in so many areas that transit only makes sense, so we continue to do that. So for our next steps, the week of May 15th, we have a series of events that we are planning. One of those is an open house that is going to be targeted for elected officials and key community and business leaders that will be held here at CAT Central. That is May 16th, Tuesday, from 4 to 7. So invitations have gone out already, and we are getting a good, strong response of people interested in attending that. We will also have a stakeholder group meeting that week. We're looking at focus group meetings during that week, as well as in addition to some pop-up sessions to be able to reach additional members of the community. And then we will be back before you at the end of June. We'll have our final stakeholder meeting, and we'll present the plan to you, hopefully, for your adoption. Any questions? All right, thank you so much.
Consent action items.
Do you need a motion to approve?
Yes, ma'am.
I make that motion.
Beverly.
I just have one question on the consent agenda.
Yes, that right?
Yeah, I was going to make sure that since our committee meetings, there has not been any changes on those items, have there?
I believe we missed that. You kind of muffled.
I was wondering whether there are any changes with any of the consent items.
No, they aren't any. Yes, we will have the additional information for after the question. Dr. Roberts?
I got it.
All right. Thank you.
Yes.
Director Odell, are you trying to respond? Director Stone? Director Lockett?
Oh.
Director Adams? Director Robinson?
Yeah.
Director Leggett? Not present for the vote. Director Taylor?
Yes.
Chairman Cody?
Yes.
Go back to Director Odell. Director Odell?
I can hear you now. I'm here.
Okay, thank you. And we're taking a vote for the approval of the consent action items.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Chairman, motion passed.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, then we don't have any individual action items. Therefore, we're gonna move on to our executive director's report. We have our CEO, Ms. Fabi Massimo.
Thank you, Chairman. So a couple of items that I want to mention. I know that the chairman in his opening remarks mentioned that June 2nd will be our ribbon cutting for the new Garden City service. We're incredibly excited about that. I also wanted you to know, I hope you've been watching our CAT casts. We've had 3 already. We've had Chairman Ellis, we've had and the county manager, we've had the mayor of Savannah, Mayor Johnson, and the city manager. And then at the last CAT cast, we had the new chamber director and the head of Visit Savannah. So this week, or this month's CAT cast is going to include the mayor and the city manager for Garden City, and we're going to specifically be talking about the Garden City service expansion. So that CAT cast will drop. It always drops the first Friday of every month. So be looking for that in May, and we're excited about that. And then we have a really exciting June CAT cast coming up with the Savannah Philharmonic. Wanted to mention that. In the APTA, on the consent action items in the APTA membership renewal, while there was no change in the actual action items, there was some information requested by board members at the last meeting with regard to the benefits of APTA. And more detail about the upcoming meetings that board members can participate in that APTA is sponsoring. That was included in the material that's in your packages. I wanted to echo the chairman's thanks to the team that was here from our master transit plan team. They have just done an incredible job over what is now coming up on a year's worth of effort by the time we get to adoption, with extensive community outreach, activation of stakeholder groups, the technical analysis that's needed, this really critical financial and implementation strategy work. And so for all of the members of that team, including those that were here with us today, I want to thank you for the great work there. SMART grant is continuing to move forward. We expect to have a contract and a release of that grant. USDOT is moving fast. They want to get these things moving. And so we provided some information back yesterday and expect to have a release on that the first part of May. So that's moving quickly. You're also going to see in the marketing and communications department that what we did early this morning. So we were excited. A part of that SMART grant is a really important year-long internship with Savannah State and their engineering technology department. And we went over this morning and had a meeting to kick off the process of the selection of the lucky engineering technology major who is going to be working with us over this coming year. And you're going to get to see a picture of that in the marketing and communications report. I hope that you all are enjoying snapshots every Friday. I call your attention to it. They're always jam-packed with lots of information. With that, I'll turn it over to our marketing and communications manager.
With that picture that Ms. Faye mentioned, we had a great meeting with Savannah State, our partners, in getting that intern in to help with the SMART grant. They're super excited. We're super excited. Excitement is all around. So, as you can see. So as before that I mentioned in the committees last week, Cat Tracker is moving forward, is moving more with downloads. Apple seems to kind of hit the mark with how many downloads we get, more than Google, but we are ramping up our promos and social media posts with Cat Tracker, and especially our Google Samsung users, because we love them as well, and we want them to enjoy this Cat Tracker and all of its benefits to Cat, and knowing, you know, where the routes are, etc. Service alerts are doing really well. If you're signed up for the service alerts, you know how frequent those alerts comes. Whenever we have a delay, whenever we have a board meeting or events of that sort, they get, our riders who have subscribed get all of those types of alerts. We saw a 12% bump in March, and we saw a lot of great percentages in all our social media platforms, as you will see a little later, which in the committee meetings, I mentioned that I kind of owe that all to St. Patrick's Day. It was a huge holiday for Savannah, and it was a huge boost for our social medias about our transportation services as well. As we see social media check-in, we have Facebook still kind of takes the top with our social media platforms. We had 27 plus users subscribe to Facebook, 4 Twitter, 14 Instagram, 2 on LinkedIn, and 9 on YouTube. And as you can see here in your board package that you received, this is just a breakdown of our social media. You know, last month we were kind of below on a lot of things, but now we're above, and I do attribute that to the St. Patrick's Day holiday and all the activities that went on in the month of March. As well as Women's Health Month. We had Transit Driver Appreciation Day that a lot of people liked about that, which is our most popular social media post in March. We always want to give back to our operators, as Director Stone mentioned in last meeting, just showing that we appreciate them for being with CAT and being along the ride with CAT as we move forward. CAT in the news, we were mentioning 38 newscasts. CAT's new maintenance facility, March service changes, and then of course the release of the SMART grant, all attributed to those newscast mentions. St. Patrick's Day recap, we had fun. That's the recap. It was a great. So Sweet Caroline topped it all off. We played Sweet Caroline about 7 times. I'm tired of Sweet Caroline, and but it was great. The audience loved it. We had some county commissioners come and join us in our celebrations in your board packet, and then even on the screen there's a QR code where our marketing communications manager Madison Williams made a recap video that you all can watch. And that's all for me. Any questions or thoughts or concerns? All right.
Before the meeting today, there was a question. We know that everyone has incredible schedules. And we have been working diligently with all board members, because we know you all want and need to participate in the upcoming budget workshop. We just want to reconfirm, as we were working to address the scheduling conflicts from the initial May 9th date that we had identified for a board workshop, there were a number of conflicts that the board members identified at the meetings, the committee meetings earlier for that time. The alternate of the 13th was identified, but when we initially discussed that with you, we didn't also mention that is Mother's Day weekend. We just want to make certain that the 13th works. And what we will plan to do on that Saturday is we will have a 2-hour budget workshop. And then the remaining strategic planning component of that workshop that we often do, or the retreat that we often do, and the planned participation of Shan Cooper as our speaker, we're going to hold that into a regular board meeting. Just pull that over so that way it doesn't require you to have to figure out yet one more meeting time. But we'll incorporate that strategic planning in the presentation from Ms. Cooper in a future board meeting. In the meantime, we wanted to just reconfirm, knowing for certain that is Mother's Day weekend, that a 2-hour meeting on the 13th on that Saturday will work for everyone. We'll do it over lunch too. We can. All right, well, it sounds like we didn't hear any other significant issues there then we will go ahead and confirm the 13th, that Saturday, for a 2-hour budget workshop, and then the strategic planning and outside speaker presentation we'll bring over into a future board meeting. Thank you all so much for the feedback on that.
Yes, sir. We have Dr. Manning, service delivery.
Good afternoon, Chair Cody, CEO Faye, and the public watching SR Live. I just want to express the importance of what is on-time performance. Now, if our service is on time, it's part of the quality service. So we should take that very seriously. That is the only time that people will depend on our service that is reliable. So the month of March was a little bit higher than last month, but not to the goal. Our on-time performance is set to 70%. And we're working so hard to see that this number goes up in the future. And so every month I will report, I'll make sure that I emphasize greatly on our on-time performance, because it's part of how a quality service should be done. Next slide, please. Okay, I have some very good news. And ridership was high in the month of March. I think, am I right? Yeah. March was 156,000. And our target was 128. So I think this is partly because of St. Patrick's Day. And I wish that we have St. Patrick's Day every month. Well, there were more people in town, so, and they all use our service, so that's a good thing. We exceeded our target ridership mark, which is a very good thing. So I hope the coming month, with everything that we've put in place, our goal is to make sure that more people use our service. And with that, is all the stuff that Ms. Faye and our team put together: clean buses on time, customer service, drivers smiling. These are all little attributes that made people want to ride our system. So we'll put all that together, and as we go on from month to month, that will be our KPI to make sure that that number goes up. Next slide, please. Again, on-time performance on paratransit. It was a percent more than last month. So on the paratransit side, it was 91%. Now, I always do my KPI by checking to what is our target. If you see on the slide, our target is 93. So one day, with all recruitment training, new buses, new electric vans coming in town, our service will get better. And we're going to beat this number. I promise you all that. So 91% compared to our target 93 was very close. So we hope that with everything, people in training, new vehicles coming up, next month, we might report a higher number. And the day that will be the 93%, I'll let the whole world know. I'll be here to say it. So that's good. Next slide, please. Now, on the ridership side, this is also very, very good. We exceeded, if you compare that to last month, it was a very, very significant change. And partly because, like I said, March was a very special month. There were a lot of people in town. And also some of the parts that were holding out. Now you're all aware that our vehicles are over useful life. And so sometimes it's either equipment or manpower, as in our industry. These two things have to be on point. you have to have the manpower, you have to have the fleet, which is the vehicles. So I'm always at the shop checking on to see what's going on. And we had so many vehicles. We had 4 vehicles that were granted for radio and also cameras. We got them all fixed. So if vehicles are right there and we have people on report and customers need our service, that is what we do, right? There's a demand and we have the supply, then we're gonna have more people using our service. These are all little stuff that people don't even see in our industry. It's not only just the buses, it's just also the people to drive the buses. So as we move on, and there's a very high demand on paratransit side that sometimes we cannot even meet the demand, So we with the leadership of Ms. Faye and a strong board support and everything that we want to do, getting vehicles, recruiting and training, this is all getting better. You can look back as a KPI and do a historical data. You're going to see that every month we're moving forward. It's always good news. So I'm proud of myself, Ms. Faye, and our team that we're moving cut forward, and that's our goal. It's like cut. So online, if you can see from November, the month of November, December, everything was zeroed in. And last February we went up 6. This month we went up. I am saying this to everybody watching us, to the public at large. Please utilize our online reservation. It will help free up all the call volume, and it's also very effective. We have everything fixed now, according to our communication department. It's working perfectly. So my campaign to the public is please use our online reservation for paratransit if you need service. That will help us in every way than people calling in and the calls are all jammed when you can have the same service online. I encourage the public watching us today to please go online and use our service for reservation. This number is what I'm watching every month, and we went up 1 more from compared to last month. So I hope this number will go up as we campaign and telling the public that we have that service. Any questions on the paratransit side before I go next to the marine? Chair, Director Taylor, you have any question on the paratransit side?
I notice when I travel outside the city, Ms. Didi sends my information forward so I may use the paratransit system in another city, whether it be DC, Virginia, or Miami. If someone is coming here, do they have that same capability? And if they do, how do we advertise it to let them know that we do have that capability here?
That's a very good question. Me and you have this conversation 2 weeks ago, and I double checked. We do have the system here. So for the public watching this, people that want to come to Savannah and have that eligibility for paratransit, please, CAT has the same service just like every other city. If you come in here, you can use your hotel as your address. This is done everywhere. And I've been in the industry too long to know this, that you don't have to have a physical address because from here, you vacation or holiday, please use your hotel address if you have eligibility to use our transit system, and it's going to be the same system that you will get in your town. And this is some campaign that moving forward, I'll make sure that we let the public know at large. CAT is capable of providing the same service. So thank you for your question, sir. Thanks. Any other questions? Okay. Yeah, you're welcome. And we'll make sure that that's also on our website And we also make sure that the public is aware that if you come to Savannah visiting, what tends people off is like, what address am I going to use? I don't live here. But I'm telling the public that by FTA, you are allowed to use your hotel as your address and request a service. So yes, thank you. And we'll make sure that this campaign is the problem. Thank you so much, Mr. Taylor. And I said earlier on, Chair Taylor, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair Cody, I apologize for sharing your title with Director Taylor. So it's director, not the chair. Sure.
Looking at the online reservation, and it is it would be so much more useful and really provide a lot of help for the folks taking the phone calls to have more people do the reservations.
Yes.
But obviously, there's some sort of major problem because the service has dropped off entirely. And I would encourage you guys to reach out and ask people why are they not using them. And if you've got records of the 31 people last September who did use it, maybe we could reach out to them and say, hey, we've noticed a pretty steep drop off. I think just being clear with people, we've noticed a big drop off. Is there a way we can make this easier? Have you had trouble finding it on the website? You may be surprised by their answers. Because I would imagine that for people trying to put the information, I'm trying to think that through in my head. I feel like it would be, it would obviously help us as an organization if
Yeah.
people were doing it online, but it's got to be easy enough or have some sort of incentive.
Director, we will analyze, because you're absolutely right, and I mean, everyone can see it. From February, March to April, there was a dramatic drop in the use of online reservations. And so we'll do an analysis of that prior to the next meeting and report back out to you on what we find were anything causal there and what we're doing to remedy it. Thank you.
As I just looked at the forms, that it would be so much easier to verbally tell you, I'm Clinton, this is my email, you can call me here, you can pick me up here, and I want to go there. But writing all that in, it is kind of tedious.
So what it is that
People realizing that, although this is a good idea, the experience of doing it is just not as ideal as calling and saying it out loud.
Well, part of the problem was that there are some people that are capable of, computer savvy, that they can go online. What the problem was that the campaign wasn't, most people didn't even know. They're only accustomed to take a phone and call for reservation. And so we have to do a good job to tell the public that we do have that access where you can also do the same thing online. Yeah.
Perhaps there's a bit of a script that call in, you get some basic air transit information. Are we letting people know that there is an online reservation? But I think, this is a really great example of us being able to, and it's small enough where I feel like we can sort of iterate, try some stuff out, and if we can get back, it's not like we were having hundreds and hundreds of reservations made. So I think this would be a good case study for, again, just user experience.
Yeah.
It kind of went down. Thank you.
Thank you. So on the marine side, it's always a good news. If you look at ridership in most of transportation, you can see that March is always high, has been high in almost power transit, fixed route, and even the marine. So again, due to what we're doing right, and also there were more people in town for the month of March. That's why the marine service, although we're operating on a limited vessel, sometimes it's two, sometimes it's one, but that's a demand, and we're doing all our best to provide that service, meet that demand. So that's also always, the marine side is always a good news when it comes to ridership. Yeah.
Dr. Meany, we want to mention here too, we are very aware that we've got some higher profile visiting groups in town this weekend and next week, as well as several coming up in this month. And we are at one vessel right now. So the bus bridge is ready to go when needed. We're also starting to think through the master transit plan effort of how do we need to better serve the areas, not just with enhanced marine services, but how do we complement with some of our surface transportation services. So just know that those are all things we're considering, but be aware, this is arguably one of, if not the most vulnerable area of operations we have right now, from the perspective that if that one vessel goes down, we're done at that moment, or for that day, or for that half a day, or whatever, and it's so visible. And so it is marine services is just something that we're constantly thinking about how to manage that risk that is there all the time.
Can I ask, what's the update on the delivery of the new boats?
So they are in production right now. And then of course, we've got a third vessel funded. And so we will, as soon as we get confirmation from the state of the match funding that we secured, at least secured the commitment there. As soon as that is done, we'll have a third that we will put out to bid. But no, they're already in production, so we're already underway on that 16 to 20 month schedule. And we've actually started getting some more detailed visuals from the the designer of what the boat will look like, what the vessel will look like, and that's pretty exciting. So no, we're getting there now.
You mentioned that we're down to one vessel, and if that vessel goes down, what is the plan if that vessel goes down?
The bus bridge.
Okay.
The bus bridge, and as expedited a recovery or repair as we can possibly make of whatever's going on with that vessel at that point in time. No, that's why I say this is by far and away the most visible and most vulnerable part of our fleet right now.
So, Director, to that question, yes, we have a bus bridge that is already in plan, and all we have to know is that Marine will let us know, and instantly it'll be activated. There's a procedure that I wrote through Ms. Faye's request that is now a general order. So anytime they need it, everybody know what to do to get it right out there. So yeah.
We should have a second vessel back. I think it's, Ms. Cutter, do you remember now on that repair? It's about 2 more weeks maybe. It's close. So we should have another. It's just, we're, like I said, this is a very aggressive game of risk management that we're doing all the time right now with this particular part of our service.
Okay. With the bus bridge, where are the locations going to be for the tourists?
Do you want to talk about the pickup points?
So at the City Hall, right across the City Hall, we have a staging area. The Marine, Captain John, they're all aware. Communications also aware. So whenever we activate it, the public's aware of it, where to pick it up, and how long it takes to cross the bridge. It's very detailed. Yeah. Is my mic on? All right. So I guess I have to speed up and give Ms. Carter some more time to talk about her stuff. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay. So if you look at this number, I've been saying this, that mean distance between vehicle failures. That means how long, in translation, how long can you run your service before your fleet breaks down? And the higher this number, the better. The national average is 14, all right, 14,000 miles before your system breaks down. Our goal is set to 12,000, which is lower than the national average. But look at the number here, 16,090. So that means, though our vehicles are all beat up, they're over useful life and all this stuff, we're still doing our best fixing them up. And I always applaud the maintenance team for doing that. So anytime you see this number goes high, it's better because you can run longer hours before you swap your bus. So this is a number to look at. Last month, I was a little bit disappointed, and I came to find out that the parts that we ordered didn't come in on time. So you can see, and I want all directors to be watching this number anytime we do a presentation. The higher this number goes up, that means that's how long we can run before our service breaks down. And so if service don't break down, there's no any service interruption. That is good service quality that we want for the city.
I just thought that this I'd be interested to know, but if that graph was broken up into diesel buses and electric buses,
That's a good idea.
and then we'd really
Yeah.
see if we got our
That's a
money
very good
worth.
idea because we
Right.
we just put the general as our fixed route. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd be really interesting to see.
I
Thank
will
you.
tell
That's
you
a brilliant idea.
one thing to that point. It's very interesting because when we were here, when Gillig was actually here as a part of St. Patrick's Day preparations, because we were running the electric vehicle, but they were here for other support that they were offering. That they just came and stayed for that event. One of the things that they pointed out to us is that we were one of 2 transit properties in the country that were running our electric vehicles. We had all 6 on the road
Yeah.
running at the same. I mean, we were one of only a couple, only 2 that they said that were running at that level of performance without any electric vehicle. And it's in part because of the training that we've done, because they're like big
Yeah.
moving computers.
Yeah.
And I think it's in part because of the training, the commitment and dedication of Dr. Manny and David Flanders, in terms of how we're operating, how we're training, and so forth. So just know that we were one of the 2 highest performing in the country on the electric buses.
Well, also, I'll preempt that with saying if you do next board meeting show us that, wow, those electric buses, they're not doing that well, I'm not going to be upset by that. I think it's not necessarily internal combustion versus electric. It's just watching the progression of how better we get with managing vehicle failures for electric buses year over year. And it's not a competition between the 2, it's just a competition with itself.
Very brilliant idea. I think
Be kind of interesting.
yes, this will also allow us to know the type of vehicles that we require, which ones are
Totally
holding on.
different
Yeah,
vehicles.
yeah. And we have diesel, hybrid, and electric. So that's a good idea. I will carry that on. Now, next slide. This is something that I'm so happy and I'm very proud to let the public and our directors and our chair to understand that we did something great. Now, I want you to compare these numbers this is the call center. This is how long people have to be on hold. We said 60 seconds, then the next call. Well, that's our target. For the first time, thanks to the gentleman there, our IT manager, and they did. It was a request by Ms. Faye. Now, all this is about public transit system is to have the right people at the right place to manage it well. Ms. Faye came to me one day and says, hey, how about if you put a message, just simple thing, put a message that when the callers call, that you're going to be on hold for amount of time or, all that information like everybody do. So we did that, and guess what? For the first time, 79 seconds, which is close to our target. If you compare that to last month, was 170 seconds that people have to be on hold. So this is the closest since I've been here that I've seen. 79, as compared to, and I just talked to Mark before my presentation. I also called Ms. Val to see what went on, and it was all simple because we put messages, we upgrade our software system. So now people can know, okay, I'm going to be on hold for more than a minute, I'll call back. And we're tracking all this. In the past, we didn't. You be on hold, nothing speaks to you, not just on hold. And then if you're lucky, somebody comes on. And also part of it is our car track system, what we call. If I'm standing at the bus stop and I know I have an app telling me the bus is going to show up 2 minutes, and the bus show up at the bus stop, why would I call the call center? There's no need. The bus is there on time. So all this attributes to this number. And I'm working so hard that we get this number to our target because that's the norm. On 60 seconds on hold, and then somebody come to you, it's a good news. This is all part of the quality service that we're campaigning on. So I'm proud to share this with Chairman Cody and the directors and to the public at large. Next slide, please. Now, this is incoming calls. Okay, so we said that we average 16,051 calls, right? That's our target. If this number goes down, that means we're doing excellent. So CAT decided that 16,000 calls per month, that's what we estimated. And the month of March was 13,000. So this is a number that I want all directors to watch. Anytime this number goes down, that means our service to the public is good. The public have to have this quality kinds of service. It's all part of public transit system. How long you be on hold, how many people call, how long you provide services. This is all part of what will make people ride our system. So this number was very good. Lower, and the lower it goes, the better, because it's even below our own target of 16,000. So, and I'll wrap it up here with my division updates, and I promise I'll run through this very quick. I talked about this last week that we hired a young gentleman, Samuel Kennedy, as our SMS safety, security, and risk manager. He's very young, but very, very smart, and we are happy to have him on board. The next one is the CDA training that I've been campaigning about. That the only way we can move forward is to get manpower. We can have brand new vehicles if we don't have the people, the manpower to take them out. Then we can provide service this way. So I did some research, and now the CDL has the federal government has a program called ELDT. So this program requires that you can have a tester. So in the past, you train somebody, you go to DMV, and then the DMV guy will test them on the road. And so that's a long process. Now the system is that you can have your in-house tester. So after the training manager will train them how to drive a bus. The tester will be in-house to take them on a road test to make sure that all the training they got, they're equipped to drive a vehicle. And then he will sign off on that to DMV. So this is a very, very important thing, because if we don't have our own in-house tester, we're going to rely on some vendors. My whole fear is that you're going to have all these people trained, and then when you call a vendor, which is a tester, and says, "Hey, I'm fully booked this week, or I'm booked all this month." These people, the students that we train, are on a payroll. We're paying them for just sitting to wait for time to get a road test. So Kennedy, who we just hired, has very good experience. He did that in California, so he's taking all the tests with the state and the federal government, and he'll be our designated tester, so to speed up the CDL training process. So I just want the board to know that also. And next month, we're going to have update on his training and his certification with the state, and of course with FTA. St. Patrick's Day, we're going to give you more update on that next month. But the good news is that we had a very good feedback. Our music, like our comms team said, I was part of the parade. It was my first time, and we really enjoyed it. And so we'll give you more details on that. Paratransit vehicles charges. This will be a board item, right? We'll start it next month. Yeah. So everything is in place for Georgia Power to install our charges, so that when the vehicles get here, we'll not have any problem to wait for that. But the good news and the bad news is that, guess what? The vehicles are here. So we got 4 of the vehicles, electric vehicles came in yesterday, and we're waiting on 6. My whole thing is that we can speed up the process and have the charges so that the vehicles don't sit here too long. It's been one of my worries. And then I also talked last week about we bought 3 brand new diesel vehicles, and I'm here to tell the board and the public that these 3 new buses are here. They arrived yesterday. They're brand new. If the board is interested to see them, we have them in our facility. So this is also going to enhance our service, because vehicle breakdown it's not a good thing. It interrupts our services. So 3 brand new diesel buses added to our fleet. It's a very, very progressive news to 2 more items and I'm done. I promise I will. So we have to put radios on our vehicles so we can communicate, right? It's part of our industry. So we're able to buy 2-way radios that will be installed on all our fleet, power transit and fixed route. And the last item is that meetings are very good. Power transit, our department had meeting last month, and because of that, I've also asked all my divisions to hold monthly meetings. When you meet and talk, that's where you know how your department is doing. So I'll have more update next month about all division meetings. And with that, I end my long conversation with the board and the public. Any questions? Thank you all for the time.
All right, we're gonna go into our planning and infrastructure.
All right, we're going to be pretty brief. Can you bring the presentation up for me? So just wanted to mention the Garden City expansion. I know we've talked about it a couple of times already earlier in the meeting, but we actually have the schedule for outbound and inbound that is published and ready to go. Next slide. June 2nd. Potential service expansion alternatives in Port Wentworth. We are excited to be talking to Port Wentworth about service expansion. And then, of course, their announcement that was reported, I believe, last week around the Ghost Pirate Training Facility location there is also, we're working with them closely on what we've already had under discussion, how that can be flexible to accommodate the needs that they may have with the training facility. On potential service expansions in Savannah and neighboring regions. I mentioned earlier, I think in answer to a question that Director Edminster had asked about the Savannah Downtowner, we had submitted a proposal last year on the Downtowner to the City of Savannah. It was not competitive from a cost perspective with their current service provider. And so we've gone back to think about a little differently about what we're proposing and how we're proposing it, and we'll be offering an alternative for the city to consider. And then we are continuing to coordinate with officials around the Hyundai plant and on the potential for commuter express service to Bryan County. And then the Master Transit Plan Open House, May 16th from 4 to 7. Again, that invitation went out to about 140 or so community officials, elected government officials, mayors, county commission chairmen, business leaders, and so forth. And we are looking forward to that opportunity to talk about the Master Transit Plan and receive their input at that open house on May 16th. Again, I think you heard earlier, that'll be located here at CAP. Next slide. Any questions? All right, very good. I'll turn it back over to you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have our financial services update, our favorite part of the show. Our CFO, Ms. Cutter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Board of Directors, to our guests who presented today, colleagues and the public at large. I'm going to be going over the financial status for the month of October, and will also be providing some year-to-date information. As the graph shows, our revenue is outperforming, of course, expenses. As of March, we had about 5.8 million in projected savings. Very good news. Those savings are attributed, of course, to many things, to include staffing shortages, in which we are aggressively working to get needed positions filled. At the bottom of the chart, pending grant reimbursement for the month of March from the FTA, we are expecting a little over $88,000.
2,000 of the grant match will come from SPOS. What if? I talked about the $5.8 million. Chatham Area Transit faces many challenges. The plan for those savings, not to spend on fluff stuff, but 3.3 million to remain in the operating account to have us ready for July. Assist with the cost to replace buses and needed IT equipment, $2 million toward vehicles, 200,000 towards IT hardware and software upgrades. In order for CAT to be the place to work, we have to continue to invest in our employees. And one thing that they have been talking about, and we made commitments to, better pension. Once they leave CAT, they've dedicated many, many years. So a portion of that will go to a set aside to enhance our pension plan. Revenue by category. For the month of March, the largest category, our paratransit revenue, which is 100% funded by Chatham County, funded by our grant proceeds. Our expenses, nothing new here. Even though we are short-staffed, salaries and wages and employee benefits makes up the largest expenditure category. Our investment interest continues to grow, doing very well. The investment is managed by the Georgia One Fund, whose focus is primarily on safety and liquidity of our investment. This is the breakdown of the investment portfolio as to how CAT's dollars are invested. Currently, we have about $7.5 million invested in the Georgia One Fund. Our budget process is moving along. We are at a point where we are examining the department's requests for funding for fiscal year 23. We've asked that they request what they need. No fluff stuff, can't afford it. So, and they were very good about that. But based upon what the priorities will be, taking into consideration the Transit Master Plan and the components of that, funding some of that, we may need to reprioritize so that we can begin to move CAT forward. We are on schedule with the budget planning. Our Human Resource Department stats for the month. We brought 5 on board. We have about 10 in class that started this week. So the recruitment numbers are going up, and we had 3 to exit the organization in the month of March, 1 involuntary termination, 1 resignation, and 1 retirement.
Ms. Cutter, one thing I want to mention before you, I know it's not a recruitment thing per se, but under the human resources category, I wanted to be sure that the directors and chairman noted that we were very proud. We are underway with a 100% participation in sexual harassment training. And we've hosted numerous sessions over the last week and have more coming up. But in addition to that, and this is a part that I'm really proud of, and it's something that Ms. Cutter touched on earlier in her presentation when she mentioned the pension, is how important it is for us to invest in our staff. They're our most important resource. And we are going to be offering financial literacy and estate planning sessions for our employees that will help them both in just all the skills you need with regard to good budgeting and retirement planning and all those kinds of good things. But in addition to that, basic wills and powers of attorney, the things you need to conduct your life. So we're very excited to be bringing those services in for our employees to benefit from.
Our recruitment efforts for the month are listed on the chart below. Even though we're getting that exposure out there, the number of offers being made during the month didn't turn out so well, but we will continue the outreach and aggressive recruitment strategies. More to come in the month of May. Dr. Manning mentioned earlier, we'll be giving the St. Patrick's Day report and its impact on ridership and what that actual cost was to provide the services, and an update on the invoices that we sent to City of Savannah and Port Worth for shuttle and sponsorships. I wanted to add for the FY24 budget, one thing that we are really stressing the importance of performance measures. It's so important that we know how well we are doing in terms of what we are spending public dollars on. It's a very serious component of the budget document, and these measures will be reported to the board so that they know how effective staff is in terms of carrying out the priorities as financed through the FY24 budget. We have a few action items coming up in the month of May. One for the electric chargers to be installed to support the paratransit electric vans that 4 came in on yesterday, and we have 6 more to come. And that concludes my presentation, and your feedback is always welcome. It helps us to do a little bit better. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. I'd like to thank all of our directors and our staff, our CEO, Mr. Massimo, Dr. Manning. We got our publication and communication managers, Ms. Ariel, and our CFO, Ms. Cutter, call her closer. She's always on the budget. So, and we like those numbers. The graphs are looking great. I want to add the graphics on them have improved a lot. I see a lot of the information that the board members was requesting that's now on there. We appreciate you for that. Next, we will be going into an executive session. It should be fairly brief. We want to go and discuss deliberation on personnel matters. Thank you. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Thank you.
Your lunch is out in the hall. Would you like to go ahead and do a motion in a second?
Yeah, let's get a motion in a second to go into executive session. Please.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Emerson?
Second. Yes.
Thank you. Director Odell? Director Odell?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Director Stone? Thank you. Director Lockett? Director Adams? Director Robinson?
Yes.
Director Leggett?
Yes.
Thank you. Director Taylor? And Chairman Cody? Chairman, motion passed to enter into executive session with a 5-minute break.
Virtual participants, I'll be starting a breakout room in just a few. Bear with us.
Beverly, the sound is gone.
Okay.
Between that and the bus bridge and everything that we're coordinating with ACCG, the county and others, we should be in good shape for ACCG.
Thank you for the update. Madam CEO, I would like to say that there was no votes or action taken in executive session. Do we have any questions or comments at this time? If not, at this time, we're going to adjourn this meeting. Thank everybody for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks for the update on the votes.
That was a good news update.
We got it. Breaking news.
I got it, Chris.